Everyone's talking about on-chain yields, token launches, and which layer 2 will win the next wave. Social feeds are flooded with price charts. Red candles, green spikes, moving like they're on caffeine, spiking one day and vanishing the next. It's exciting, sure, but it's also short-term noise. Because the real money, the real transformation, rarely lives in speculation. It doesn't care about hashtags or hype cycles. It lives in the rails, the systems you don't see, the invisible plumbing that actually moves value from one place to another. And here's the truth. Stellar was never built to be the flashy casino floor of crypto. It wasn't designed for meme coin glory or pump-and-dump fame. It was built to be the rails themselves, industrial grade, boring in the best possible way. The infrastructure you can rely on even when the hype dies down. For more than a decade, Stellar's ledger, its anchors, and a growing web of institutional partners have been threading themselves through the arteries of global money movement. Quietly, consistently, IBM didn't pick it by accident when it built WorldWire. Payment companies didn't choose it as a testbed for corridors because they liked the logo. They chose Stellar because it could do what others couldn't: connect fiat to on-chain assets in a way that works in the real world, not just in crypto sandboxes. And now we get to the real thesis. There are entire markets, untapped corridors, where payments are slow, fees are predatory, and access to finance is still a privilege, not a default. Migrant workers sending remittances into rural Africa. Freelancers in Southeast Asia waiting days to get paid. Small cross-border business flows in Latin America stuck with outrageous FX spreads. Entire communities where credit exists only in the form of informal IOUs, where payroll is cash in an envelope, where banking means standing in line for hours. These aren't fringe cases. They are massive, recurring money flows happening every single day. And they are exactly the kind of flow Stellar was born to capture. Low fees, near-instant settlement, built-in compliance tools, a model where anchors can bridge local currencies directly onto the network, and tokenization features that can turn credit, payroll, and savings into programmable, accessible assets. Here's the difference. This isn't about chasing the next pump. This is about laying track, onboarding the right anchors in the right corridors, integrating with local payment rails, designing financial products that meet the needs of the unbanked and the underbanked. When you do that, you're not just creating another blockchain project. You're building a payments network that people and businesses will depend on every single day without even realizing they're touching crypto. And the kicker? This isn't some far-off future vision. The infrastructure exists right now. The corridors have been tested. The anchors are already live. The regulatory playbooks are written. All that's missing is the push to scale into the markets where the economics are so much better than the legacy rails, it's almost unfair. If Stellar captures even a modest share of these flows, the remittances, the micro B2B trades, the regional payment corridors, we're not talking about a niche win. We're talking about unlocking a market measured not in millions, not even in billions, but in the hundreds of billions. So stay with me. In the next few minutes, we'll map the corridors with the biggest upside. We'll break down why Stellar's tech stack and anchor model give it a practical edge. And we'll walk through the exact product and go-to-market plays that could transform these hidden pockets of opportunity into a global payments engine. Because this is where the story shifts from hype to reality, from speculation to infrastructure, from chasing the wave to laying the rails that every wave will eventually have to ride. There's a $500 billion market hiding in plain sight, quietly pulsing with financial activity that the mainstream financial world barely acknowledges. It doesn't make headlines. It's not part of the quarterly reports on Wall Street. And you won't find it in the flashy startup pitch decks coming out of Silicon Valley. This market lives in the overlooked corridors of the global economy. The remittance routes connecting migrant workers to their families back home. The small traders moving goods across borders in West Africa or Southeast Asia. The microfinance cooperatives in rural towns where banks have no branches and no incentive to set up shop. It's the shadow financial system where money moves constantly, but without the efficiency, security, or fairness that modern technology can provide. We're talking about people who already transact daily in amounts that, collectively, are staggering. Migrant workers sending a few $100s a month to support their families. Multiplied by millions of senders worldwide, becomes tens of billions in flow. Street vendors sourcing goods from neighboring countries are part of a constant stream of micropayments that never touch a bank ledger. And then there are the humanitarian aid channels, the cross-border freelance payments, and the growing volume of small-scale e-commerce orders, all slowed down or taxed heavily by outdated infrastructure. Here's the reality. In many of these regions, sending $200 can cost as much as $25 in fees. Transfers can take days. The systems are so fragmented that people physically cross borders carrying cash, risking loss, theft, and security issues because it's faster than trying to do it digitally. Banks see these regions as too small to care about. Payment giants see them as too risky to prioritize. But collectively, they represent a market larger than many of the biggest economies in the world. And this is exactly where Stellar is playing a game no one else is willing to play. Instead of trying to overthrow the banking system or compete with every payment giant, Stellar is becoming the bridge, the invisible connective tissue between legacy finance and the billions of people those systems have failed to serve. It's not just about low fees, though Stellar's fees are fractions of a cent, or speed, settlement in seconds, not days. It's about unlocking financial access where there's both the greatest need and the least competition. This isn't just a technology opportunity, it's an inevitability. The demand is already there. The transactions are already happening. The only missing piece is the infrastructure that can connect these fragmented, informal channels into a seamless, global flow. And that's the exact puzzle Stellar has been quietly building to solve. Most people still think of crypto as something you trade on an exchange or a tool for speculation. But Stellar's vision goes way beyond that. It's about building the pipes for real-world money to move faster, cheaper, and across borders where the traditional system has failed. And when you zoom in, you start seeing a pattern. There are entire corridors, high-volume remittance routes, underbanked trade channels, and cross-border payment flows that are still operating like it's 1995. Take Africa to Latin America, Southeast Asia to Middle East, or even rural domestic transfers within massive countries. These are high-friction, high-fee zones. Banks charge a premium because they know there's no competition, and settlement can take days. This is where Stellar thrives. Its infrastructure isn't just theoretical. It's already connecting anchors, payment providers, and fintech platforms that can bridge fiat and digital instantly. And here's the kicker, these corridors aren't niche. They represent hundreds of billions in annual flows that no major financial institution has figured out how to streamline profitably. If Stellar locks down even a fraction of these routes, it's not just entering the market. It's shaping the market. It's taking on Western Union, SWIFT, and outdated regional networks head-on, with a model that scales faster and costs less to operate. Beyond the big remittance corridors, there's an even larger, quieter market that most investors never see. The billions of people who are technically invisible to the financial system. We're talking about rural farmers who can't open a bank account, small shop owners who can't access credit, migrant workers whose wages evaporate in transfer fees, and entire communities where moving money means handing cash to a bus driver and hoping it arrives. In these zones, the barriers are brutal. No local banking infrastructure, no reliable identity verification, and no cheap way to send or store value. Traditional finance doesn't go there because it's expensive to serve and hard to scale. But Stellar? This is its sweet spot. Its blockchain can onboard users with nothing more than a basic phone, connect them to local anchors who bridge cash to digital, and allow them to send, receive, and even save without touching a traditional bank. And here's where the market opportunity gets staggering. The World Bank estimates that over 1.4 billion adults are unbanked, yet mobile penetration in developing regions is skyrocketing. That's a perfect storm. Billions of potential users, ready infrastructure, and a financial system that's been ignoring them for decades. If Stellar becomes the go-to rails for these transactions, it's not just tapping into $500 billion in flows. It's laying claim to the foundation of a new global economy, one where the unreachable suddenly become active, empowered participants. When you zoom out, Stellar's play here isn't just about moving money faster or cheaper, it's about redesigning who gets to participate in the global economy. If the last 50 years of finance were about connecting existing financial hubs, the next 50 will be about lighting up the dark zones, those areas where the economy exists but never shows up in the data. Think about how the internet exploded once the cost of entry dropped. When smartphones became cheap enough, Billions of people who had never owned a computer suddenly became part of the global online community. Entire new industries appeared because access was no longer a privilege of the few. That's the same kind of inflection point we're looking at with financial access, and Stellar is positioning itself as the low-cost, high-access infrastructure that makes it possible. Here's the strategic kicker. Once a region's transactions start running on Stellar rails, switching costs are almost non-existent for the user but massive for competitors. Why? Because the local ecosystem merchants, remittance providers, mobile money agents becomes accustomed to the speed, cost, and interoperability of Stellar's system. Rip that out, and you're asking people to accept higher fees, longer waits, and more friction. It's the same reason people stick with certain messaging apps even when new ones appear. The network effect becomes the moat. And Stellar doesn't need to capture every corridor to win. Even if it dominates a few strategically important ones, say, between major African markets or across remittance-heavy Asia-Middle East flows, that's enough to lock in hundreds of billions in annual volume. From there, the secondary effects kick in. Microlending networks spring up because payments are now trackable and secure. Small businesses get cross-border supplier relationships they could never access before. Humanitarian aid gets delivered directly to recipients instead of being eaten up by middlemen. This is where the market opportunity becomes exponential. A single rural farmer, once invisible to banks, can start receiving payments instantly for crops sold to buyers in another country. That same farmer, now with a transaction history, becomes eligible for credit. Multiply that across millions of people, and you're not just talking about remittance fees, you're talking about creating entire new GDP segments. And the beauty of Stellar's model is that it doesn't require tearing down existing systems. It plugs into whatever is already there. Cash kiosks, mobile money services, even small credit unions, and quietly becomes the bridge that connects them to the rest of the world. It's like building a highway network where there used to be dirt paths and charging a tiny toll on every car that passes. The end game? If Stellar can entrench itself in these underserved zones before big banks or centralized digital currency systems roll in, it becomes the de facto settlement layer for a massive, previously ignored portion of the world's economy. And that's not a niche market, that's the future majority. The writing is on the wall. And if you can read between the lines, you'll see exactly where this is headed. The global financial system is quietly pivoting toward inclusivity, speed, and cost efficiency. Stellar has positioned itself in a way that doesn't just let it participate in this shift. It allows it to define it. That $500 billion market everyone's ignoring is not a dream. It's not theoretical. It's not a crypto fantasy cooked up for hype. It's already there, growing every single day in the migrant remittance corridors, in underserved microfinance sectors, in the mobile money ecosystems of emerging markets, and in cross-border settlements for small businesses who've been locked out of traditional banking for decades. We're talking about a real transformation where technology isn't just making payments possible. It's making them borderless, instant, and affordable. Stellar's infrastructure is already woven into projects on the ground. And the more these corridors light up, the more liquidity flows through the network, and the faster Stellar's adoption curve accelerates. This isn't the story of a single token pumping because of speculation. It's the blueprint of a network becoming indispensable to global finance. A network that governments, fintechs, and even traditional banks can't afford to ignore once they realize the alternative is losing entire customer bases to faster, cheaper, smarter rails. So the real question is, will you be the person who heard about Stellar unlocking a $500 billion market before the crowd caught on and took action? Or will you be watching from the sidelines when the headlines hit and the price has already moved? If you see the potential, if you understand that this isn't about hype but about inevitable adoption, then this is the moment to start paying very close attention. Because once this door opens, it's not closing again. If you found this breakdown valuable, hit like, share this with someone who needs to see the bigger picture, and drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know if you think Stellar's play here is as big as it looks. And if you want more deep dives like this, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one.